Good morning. We have special guests today from Miami, Florida, from Miss Crossett's fourth grade class. I'm Patricia's dad, and I make maple syrup. And actually, you have just came on live pretty much at the right time. I have a machine that tells me when it's syrup, and it just happened to turn to that number. Almost. Patricia knows how this goes. Sometimes it's right there, sometimes it goes away. But we're going to give a special shout out to the True North Academy, where Patricia is the fourth grade teacher, and I hope you guys are learning from her, and girls. Here we go. We have syrup right here. You can see. We had syrup and it went away again. But it's a very tricky little thing we do all the time through the maple season. Maple season usually starts at March, the first part of March, within the first week, and goes until the first week of April or so. At this point, I have made 96 gallons of syrup. And we're almost there. And actually, I have a little sample bottle that I will be sending Patricia for all her students. Just trying to get this number to work for us. Oh, and look it. Patricia's just sent a message, and I can see all of you sitting at your desk. There's Oliver, Marco, Olivia, Gibson, Aaron, Al, Noah, Joy, Mason, Antonio. I might not get all your names right, but Ethan, and Antonelli, Logan, Sophia, Shane, Juliet, Alexander, Maya, Hunter. There's David, Jeff, Lucas, and Lima, Victoria, Andrina, Nicholas, William, Ashley. There's a Valerie, Sophia, Francis, Gavin, C, and Gavin R, along with Matthew, Ben, Elsie, Kenny, Samantha, and Nicole. I'm not paying attention. I'm just trying to keep things as they should be. And we all want to see syrup made, including me. So while Patricia was home, we made 15 or 20 gallons. She had a good time. And we decided to see if we could show you guys how we make syrup. So what we do is, I have a set of woods that's over 5 or 6 miles away from here. We go to the woods, and we have a bunch of lines that go through the woods, and the lines connect into the trees, and then the lines also come to a gathering tank, which is down in the woods. On days that it gets below freezing, which is 32, but generally, say 27, 26, 25 degrees in the morning or overnight, and we like to see it warm up to about 40 to 45 degrees. And when that happens, the sap from the maple trees run into these tubes, down into the back. Then I take my pickup truck and go and fill, draw my syrup or sap back to the sugar house. I pump it off the sugar house, and then behind this wall there's a bunch of tanks that we store it in there, and it keeps it cool until we get enough to where we can boil. So once we get to that stages, the sap is pumped up into a tank, which is right here. After it comes into this tank, it flows down through into this machine, which is called an evaporator. And all it's doing is taking the water out of the sap. And as it does that, it gets a sweeter and a sweeter product. And it's eventually a maple syrup. As it goes through this machine that warms it through a bunch of coils, then it goes into this pan. This pan is only this big. And there's a whole bunch of flues in it. It comes in through this box. It comes out right here. When it does, it comes back into this pan. I just hope I don't disappoint you guys. It's been a tough morning to make syrup, but we will get some. As it gets into this pan, it makes its way through a couple channels, and it eventually will come out to this valve right here. This valve is controlled by this, it's a probe that goes in to my sap thing. We're almost there. We have 2/10, 1/10 of a degree to go. So right here, with any luck, if you can see the valve, we have syrup. I also check it with this. It's called a hydrometer. It measures if it really is syrup. And I always take a sample, and it is. And I'm going to show you. We're still making syrup. So at this time, we'll probably make a half a gallon of syrup. Once I get the machine up and running good, it really works well. So on my, just have to kind of keep paying attention. I'm not ignoring this. And this valve actually is controlled by itself. Once it reaches a temperature less than what I have, it will shut down. And we'll see that. This is called a hydrometer. I believe that I already mentioned that to you. So now the temperature has gone down of my syrup that's in the front pan. This valve is shut off. So on this hydrometer, I'm not sure, but I think you guys may be able to see. There's two red lines. One of them is what they call a cold test, and the top one is called the hot test, which I have taken a sample that came out of that valve, and I let it set into that. And if you can see, I'm spilling syrup on myself, but that's okay. That red line is just floating to the top of the syrup that is in that cup. And that is the true way to know if that's syrup. So we make some syrup right there. And that just keeps going. The sap flows down, goes through this machine, comes back out into this. It's constantly moving. As the sap boils, it gets to be more dense or more heavier. And because it's heavier, it keeps pushing through the system, through that system, back through this system. And the heavier stuff is at this point of the evaporator, and that's where the syrup is made, is in this spot. It's made throughout the whole machine, but when it reaches syrup, it happens right here, which is the hottest part of this machine. A lot of people use wood to build a fire to make this, because this all happens with heat. I use fuel oil, so it's a whole lot safer, cleaner, and whatnot. Patricia was just a little girl when we started. We've been doing syrup now for probably 15 years. So she's seen it many times. If you have any questions, she's a syrup expert. I'm sure that she can answer some of your questions. But again, we have a lot of fun. And I'm hoping to send down, which not hoping I will, each one of you a little sample bottle of some New York famous syrup. And then maybe, I believe one year Patricia had a pancake breakfast with the students at her school. So it happens all the time. Once this number keeps climbing, once we get it to the number that I've set at, again, the valve will open. So let me think of some other. Anybody got any questions? I know that I can't hear you, and you guys can hear me. But so sap comes from a maple tree. When it comes from the maple tree, it's what it's called 2% sugar, generally. And we take that 2% sugar, and we have to take the water out of it and make maple syrup. The less water, it becomes more maple syrup. Patricia just sent me a message asking how much this machine costed. This machine is just one part of the whole system. This machine was $12,000 back 3 years ago when I bought it. The maker of it is called CDL. Again, it's just one part of the process. Out in this back room, I don't even know if you can see it, but there's another machine that sits over there. That was another $12,000 for that machine. This machine right here, I'll wheel her out here. It's called a filter press. This is a machine that's very well needed. Back when we first started, filtering was a huge, huge issue. This machine just has made things so much nicer. For instance, that machine, it was probably around $3,000. Patricia's very rich, so she has given me this money to have fun. So making maple syrup is not a cheap process. But last weekend we had Maple Weekend. We probably had around 125 people show up. Everybody that came had a great time. All the kids got little goodie bags to go. And we had hot dogs and meatballs and potato chips and all kinds of stuff. So we do have fun. Our number is climbing again. I generally make or draw syrup out of this valve probably every 5 to 7 minutes. And when I do, I probably make a gallon, which this machine, I can make around 10 gallons of syrup per hour, which is pretty good for this machine. We're at 220.6. And that's what our temperature is. And that's today, that's what syrup is making at, is 220.6. Here we go, we're making more syrup. Again, if I look at this meter, or this, sometimes I forget the names of them. And it's very hot, believe it or not. I'm flowing to my red line that we showed, you know. This is called a hydrometer. It tastes very good. We have many tools that we tested with all the time as far as to make sure that when you do get a gallon of syrup, it really is syrup. It's sticky. I just had a good friend tell me that if you guys hit the subscribe button on my YouTube channel, you'll get a lucky, it brings you good luck is what it is. So if you think of it, you can go to YouTube Live or YouTube. Patricia would be able to tell you better than I. Go to YouTube and search Clay Crossett or Clay Sugar Shack, and you will see some of the videos that we made. And actually, we made one Maple Weekend, which was a week ago tomorrow, Saturday. This is another machine. It's a handheld machine, but it's called a refractometer. And this also measures the density, because that is what syrup goes by, its density. It also measures the density of syrup. And I know that syrup is actually 66 bricks. That is the measurement that they use for syrup. It's 66 bricks. BRIXX. So, if you test the syrup and that red line isn't showing, I go over to this. You'll see me pay attention to this quite often. This tells me everything. If the syrup, if my red line isn't showing, that means that I have to increase the heat. So I adjust this number to a higher number. If the red line is too high above the liquid or the syrup, then at that point it's too hot. I adjust the temperature to this number lower. Usually syrup is made 7 degrees above the boiling point of water. And I'm not sure if you guys know what the temperature of water boils at. But water boils, or is supposed to boil, on the average of 212 degrees. So with that being said, maple syrup would be made at 219 degrees. But given many factors, that doesn't always happen. Last weekend, we made maple cream and maple candies. And the water, because I always test water to see what water boils at. Last Saturday, water boiled at, no, that's incorrect. Last Thursday, water boiled at 208 degrees. And then on Friday, water boiled here at 210. So depending on the temperature of water is kind of how I set that. But to fine tune this being syrup, I use this hydrometer and that red line. This evaporator I have been using for, I believe this is my 4th season. Prior to that, I've had different evaporators. They all do the same thing, but this one is a little more fancier. It has a little more, a few more options that some of the least expensive ones or the lesser expensive ones have. It has a hood on it. So all this is steam. So steam is moisture, moisture is water. So the steam is caught in this hood and it goes up this chimney. And then if you were to go outside, you would see a bunch of steam coming up one of my chimneys. Out here is my exhaust for my heat source. How long does it take to get sap to be syrup? It all depends. But I actually started the machine last night because I knew that we were going to try to do this live thing today. So I didn't want you guys to sit there and say, well, Miss Crossett, when's your dad going to make syrup? When's your dad going to make syrup? Because I've had many people sit here and say, well, where's the syrup? So I actually started the process last night. Once I made syrup, I quit, and I started it again this morning around 11 o'clock, maybe a little later. I can evaporate 40 gallons an hour, which from sap to syrup, you know, it takes me just about 15 minutes once it enters this machine to get through to make syrup out this valve. It takes 40, here we go, we got syrup again. I kind of like to always look at my gauge. Again, it is floating on that red line. It's also dripping on my shoe. So we know we have syrup. A little bit heavy or dense. So I'm going to adjust this number down, which generally that happens when you first start the machine. So once it gets running, usually 219.5 to 219.8 in them ranges, I can usually make this red line flow. Once it gets set, it's pretty well takes care of itself. A few things that you watch is I have some marks on a tube cylinder right here, and it tells me the depth of what's in here. And then I also down in here have a mark that tells me the depth that's in this syrup pan. This is called the front pan, and this is called the flute pan. Altogether, this machine is 6 feet long and it's 2 feet wide, which is called a 2x6. Does anybody want some maple syrup? If you do, raise your hand and holler. I will, I'll be right back. I'm going to show you something. could have got these things ready earlier, but I just thought of a few things that we made. This is actually the maple syrup that we made last Saturday. A nice color, and it's considered to be amber in color. I believe that today's syrup will be that same thing. One of my favorites, and I think maybe Patricia likes these as well, they are maple glazed walnuts. They have syrup and some other stuff into them. We also have maple candy. They're hard candies in the shape of a maple leaf. We also make, it is granulated maple sugar. All these things are made by temperature. This here is a sample cup of maple cream. And it's just like peanut butter almost. Everybody kind of dips their finger into it and eats it. And that is almost like peanut butter consistency. And you can spread it on toast. It is very, very good. But ultimately, the goal is to make maple syrup. This is 1 gallon of maple syrup. I charge for the cost of it, and also I have a little name tag on my syrup bottle. And then on the back of it, it tells that I make maple cream and some other different products. Patricia's aunts, Aunt Kathy and Aunt Kim, do a lot of the making of the nuts, the maple candy, the sugar, and the maple cream. So that's some of the things that we make. Once this container is full, at that point, I hook up this machine. This machine, I add a chemical. It's not a chemical, it's a product. I have a phone call. See you guys later. I hope you enjoyed. And again, we are making syrup. They looked excited. go to work.